Sometimes the most revealing moments happen when nobody expects them. Not during a red carpet interview, not during a rehearsed speech, but on a random Monday morning, when two people who've spent 30 years building a life together simply forget to filter themselves. That's exactly what happened when Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos sat down at the top of their show, visibly running on no sleep, and let the audience into something that felt less like a celebrity anecdote and more like a window into how they actually operate as a couple when the cameras of a bigger night have already gone home. The occasion was Broadway's biggest night of the year, the Tony Awards, and for this particular family, it wasn't just an industry event to attend and comment on the next day. It was personal. Mark had spent the past several weeks living inside a revival of Fallen Angels, and their son Joaquin was part of the cast of Death of a Salesman, a production that would go on to dominate the evening. So when Kelly Ripa told her studio audience she didn't want any lip after clearly pulling an all-nighter, it wasn't a throwaway joke. It was the tell. Something had happened the night before that was worth staying up for, and you could feel it in the way she said it, playful, a little exhausted but proud underneath it. Here's the thing about watching two people who have been married for decades try to describe a night that meant everything to them. They don't sound like publicists. They sound like a couple finishing each other's sentences, correcting each other's timelines, laughing at details the other one forgot. And that's really the heart of why this story landed the way it did with viewers. It wasn't about the party itself. It was about watching two people process a meaningful night in real time, in front of an audience, without a script telling them how to feel about it. Mark described the official after-party at the Carlyle as sophisticated, refined, the kind of room where you'd expect quiet conversation and good lighting. But Kelly admitted something far more interesting than a review of the venue. She confessed that she barely absorbed any of it because she was too starstruck. Not by Broadway royalty in the abstract, but by people she has genuinely idolized for years. She called herself a Broadway musical devotee who found herself surrounded by her actual heroes, and compared the feeling to her own version of the Super Bowl. Think about that comparison for a second because it says more than it seems to on the surface. Kelly Ripa is someone who has interviewed presidents, pop stars, and Oscar winners without blinking. She built a career on being composed on camera. So when she says a room full of theater performers left her too overwhelmed to speak, that's not a small admission. That's a woman describing the one place where fame doesn't make her the confident one in the room, it makes her the fan. And there's something deeply relatable in that because most of us have had that exact experience, standing near someone whose work shaped us, suddenly unable to form a normal sentence. Seeing someone as accomplished as Kelly Ripa described that same paralysis is oddly comforting. It reminds viewers that admiration doesn't disappear with success. If anything, it just changes shape. But the moment that really pulled people in wasn't the description of the official party at all. It was what came after. Mark revealed that once the sanctioned, photographed portion of the evening wrapped up, the two of them didn't go home to sleep. They went home to keep celebrating, quietly, privately, on their own terms. He called it their after party, a phrase that almost sounds like an inside joke between them, and admitted it was a sneaky one, thrown together at their 5-story townhouse on Manhattan's Upper East Side, a home widely reported to be worth around $27 million. Now, it would be easy to focus on the price tag. Headlines certainly did. But the emotional core of this story has almost nothing to do with square footage or real estate value. It has everything to do with the choice they made. They had already attended the official event. They had already done the required socializing, the photographs, the industry mingling. Nobody would have questioned them for calling it a night. Instead, they chose to bring the celebration home to their own roof, with people they actually wanted to be around on a night too beautiful to waste on sleep. Mark explained that they ended up on the rooftop specifically because the weather was so clear and warm, and that the night stretched on long enough for them to watch the sun rise with a group of close friends. There's something almost cinematic about that image. A couple who could have gone anywhere in the city, who had access to every glamorous room in Manhattan that night, choosing instead to end up somewhere quiet and elevated, watching the sky change color with people who actually know them. It's worth pausing on why that detail resonates the way it does. In an industry built on appearances, the instinct is usually to be seen. The Carlyle afterparty was the version of the night meant for cameras, for mingling, for being photographed among Broadway's elite. The rooftop was the version meant for nobody but themselves. And audiences tend to respond strongly when public figures reveal which version of an event they actually preferred. It suggests something honest about what they value, not the visibility but the intimacy that comes after the visibility ends. There's also the family layer running underneath all of this, and it might be the most emotionally resonant part of the entire story. This wasn't simply two people out celebrating a work achievement. It was a father watching his son collect an honor on one of the most important stages in American theater. The couple described watching Joaquin, now in his 20s, process the moment when the cast of Death of a Salesman was recognized as the night's biggest winner. There's a particular kind of pride that comes from watching your child succeed in a room that once felt impossibly out of reach to you, and then getting to celebrate it not as an interview segment, but as a family on a rooftop, with the people who understand exactly what it means. That's part of why viewers have stayed emotionally attached to this couple for years. It's not just chemistry between two spouses, it's the sense that they've built an actual life alongside their television careers. Their audience has watched their children grow up in stories told across the years, not staged for effect, but referenced the way any parent might casually mention their kids at work. When a moment like the Tonys comes along, it doesn't read as two celebrities attending an industry function. It reads as a family experiencing something enormous together, and letting the public briefly feel like part of that circle too. There's also something worth noticing in how Kelly and Mark tell stories about each other. Watch closely and you'll notice the way they hand details back and forth, correcting timelines, adding texture the other one skipped, occasionally teasing each other about who was more overwhelmed or more exhausted the next morning. That kind of storytelling rhythm doesn't come from two people performing a happy marriage for an audience. It comes from 3 decades of actually finishing each other's sentences. Communication like that isn't something you can fake convincingly on live television, day after day for years. Audiences pick up on authenticity almost instinctively, and it's part of why this couple's chemistry continues to feel different from typical morning show pairings. It's easy to reduce a story like this to its most surface-level details: an expensive house, a celebrity party, a late night. But underneath the surface is something a lot of viewers quietly crave in their own relationships. Partners who still choose each other's company over anything else the world can offer, even when the world is offering quite a lot that particular night. Kelly and Mark had access to one of the most exclusive rooms in New York, and they still ended up choosing their own roof, their own friends, and each other. Maybe that's the real reason this story kept circulating well beyond the initial headlines. It isn't really a story about a party. It's a story about what two people do when nobody's making them perform anymore, when the cameras from the main event have gone home, and all that's left is the choice of how they want to spend the hours before sunrise. And the fact that they chose intimacy, humor, and each other says something quietly powerful about what's kept them together this long. Perhaps the reason so many people remain invested in Kelly Ripa and Mark Consuelos isn't simply because they've spent decades in the spotlight together. It's because audiences keep catching these small, unscripted glimpses of two people who still genuinely enjoy each other's company, even after all the fame, all the milestones, and all the nights that could have gone 100 different, flashier directions. So here's a question worth sitting with. If you had access to the most glamorous party in the city, would you stay there? Or would you sneak home to watch the sunrise with the people who matter most? Let us know in the comments what stood out to you most about this story, and if you've got a favorite Kelly and Mark moment that stuck with you over the years, we'd genuinely love to hear it.